welcome to the credit status and savings lesson. So in this lesson, the goal is to really give you a brief overview of the most popular loan programs, especially in this area. I'm in the Norfolk, Chesapeake area of Virginia Beach, so it's a very high military town. So the VA program is extremely popular here. So I'll go over a quick overview of loan programs, down payments, what are closing costs, why you need to bring them, and how do you need to account for them. But then also touch on credit status, like the minimum credit scores, and how to and what to have in your savings. That way you are set up for the costs that do come up during the transactions. So first off, I want to go over credit scores. So there are a dozen different software websites out there. You can get a quick overview of your credit score to kind of get a ballpark of seeing what your credit score is currently. And there's a lot of things that go into that: credit card utilization, payment history, like what is your oldest account, and paying on time. That's going to be the most heavily weighed part of your credit score. So if we have credit card debt that is really high, or we have a lot of loans that we're paying out, or if you've missed a payment, all these things are going to, or if you don't really have much credit history at all, that's really going to negatively affect the credit score. And so the way that we accomplish repairing that is we actually partner with a credit repair company who works on individual ways that are unique to you to improve your credit score. And that way we can get them above these minimums that are required for certain loan programs, such as the VA loan. So the VA loan is for anyone military. The benefits of that are it's going to have a 0% down payment, and it does require a minimum of 600 credit score. And that's why it's important to first make sure our credit is proper and up to these minimums, because then we can qualify for better programs as we move through. And the credit is going to be the first thing before we do the pre-approval, which we know is before we even start showing houses. And so that's why this is the first on the docket. We have the FHA loan, so that's going to be 3% down. The minimum there is going to be 620 credit score. The reason that's beneficial is because the VA is only access to military. The FHA is going to be one of the lowest down payments available to it. It's generally given the first-time home buyer, but you don't, as long as your name isn't on a mortgage, then you can qualify for the FHA loan. And this is good because if you have a $200,000 house, it's a $6,000 down payment, and you can secure the loan, and the bank will actually fund the rest of that payment for you. And then we have conventional, which is 5%, but you can go as high as you want. This has a 680 minimum credit score. And the reason this is beneficial, it's 5% down, but the reason this is beneficial is that it's generally a lower interest rate. So the less down payment, generally the higher the interest rate. And so that's why if we can qualify for a better program, we can get a better interest rate and have a lower payment overall throughout the 30 years. And then talking about the savings. So as I touched on in the beginning, there's two parts of the real estate transaction. The first part is going to be the closing cost, and the second part is going to be the funding for the loan, the down payment. And this is something I wish somebody made crystal clear to me when I purchased my first property, was that those two things are separate. Okay, so let's just use the FHA 3% down as a typical example. And with that, this 3% down is to secure the loan. That's the down payment on the loan, the funding. There's a separate 3 to 4% closing costs, which is relative to the purchase price. So using that same $200,000 example, it's going to be $6,000 to secure the down payment for the loan, and then it's going to be another $6,000 to $8,000 for closing costs. Closing costs are separate. That's going to be all of the fees required on the back end to conduct that transaction. So that's going to be making sure that you're getting a clean title when the keys are handed to you. That way there's no liens, or there's no derogatory marks on that to where you inherit it when you buy that house. You want a clean title when it's handed to you. There are recording fees with the city, the state. There are just a ton of transaction fees on the back end, legal fees. And during the CD, so the closing disclosure, you'll see all those marked out on line per line. But just understand that for now, there's two separate. So if we can get a VA loan where there's 0% down, you will still have 3 to 4% in closing cost. And so understanding that $200,000 example, it's not $6,000, so 3% down payment. You need to be prepared to do $12,000 to $14,000 to secure that property on that $200,000 transaction. Okay, so with that, there are ways to manipulate that. There are loan programs like the VHDA that allow for 0% down. They do have programs that can give you grants up to 2%, and so there are ways to alleviate the down payment to where we can get down payment assistance with the loan program. So we could come up with minimal down payments. And there's also ways to leverage the closing costs. We can ask the seller to compensate us for the closing costs. All of these areas are parts of negotiation. So don't get discouraged if you hear that big number. But I do need you to understand and mentally prepare that they're two separate transactions and they're two separate negotiations that we need to overcome during this transaction. Okay, that way we don't come in underprepared. And understand quick math, if you're going to the FHA on that program, in your savings you should have that stuff readily available, because on closing day, that's the money we're going to need to bring to the closing table. Okay, in the future or in the offer section, I'll go over the EMD home inspection, which these two things are out-of-pocket expenses for the buyer that aren't in your closing cost. And they're not expensive, but we'll go over that in the next session, so that way you know exactly what it's going to cost to conduct or purchase a home. Okay, so with that, we're going to move into the pre-approval. And again, if you have any specific questions about a certain loan program or down payment or what it would cost on a certain property, go ahead. The link's below. Schedule a 15-minute call, and we can deep dive into anything specific.